that all the deception and trickery is necessary to keep the monstrosities at bay. There's a good strong hint there that the monstrosities are a metaphor for horror fans, who eagerly seek out every opportunity to watch people die graphically on screen. By strangers who tell them that the apocalypse is coming, unless one member of the family dies at the hands of another in a ritual sacrifice. Much of the question of the movie is whether the intruders, led by the hulking Leonard, Dave Bautista, are just delusional, and whether one of the family members dying will actually mean anything. But various signs suggest they're telling the truth, which forces the family into an awful decision that plays directly into the views on faith and religion that M. Night Shyamalan built into some of his earlier movies. The aims of the two films seem to be directly opposed. Knock at the Cabin suggests the importance of faith in the face of the unknowable, while Cabin in the Woods answers that it isn't worth keeping faith in people or gods with bad intentions. But they make a perfect double feature because of the way they interact. Knock at the Cabin raises a lot of questions it doesn't answer, and leaves so much room for interpretation that it's easy to see it as anything from a warning about environmental disaster to a coy expression of homophobia disguised as a love story. Cabin in the Woods reads like a response, somehow released 12 years earlier, and its answers to Knock's questions are pretty funny. Above all, Knock at the Cabin leaves its entire setup open-ended. It's never clear what idea or force is behind the kill each other or the world ends business. Is it the Christian God testing the faithful again, as he does in the Old Testament, when he demands his follower Abraham turn his son into a human sacrifice? Is it the gods of some other religion or pantheon or faith? The devil? Just a cosmic quirk? Shyamalan almost certainly left out those answers, just like Paul Tremblay, who wrote the novel the movie is based on, did in his much grimmer version of the story, to keep viewers from quibbling over religious dogma. Instead, both men seem to want their audience to stick to the barest version of the question. Would you kill someone you love to save countless other people? But that leaves the surviving Knock characters at sea in a cruel world where they're expected to respect the sacrifice of the one who died, without really having any idea of why it was necessary, or who to blame, appeal to, or question. In effect, they don't know what to feel except grief. Arguably, that's not so different from anyone who loses a family member and wonders why it happened, and where to put the anger and frustration that so often occur alongside grief. But it doesn't make for an entirely satisfying horror thriller or an entirely satisfying philosophical experiment. It just leaves the story and characters on an ambiguous and even nihilistic note. Cabin in the Woods dials into the specifics of the scenario to make the metaphor clearer and the landing more satisfying. It puts a face on the torments Dana and her friends are facing, a very human face that's actively chosen to lie to the victims and cover up why they're dying. And when the Cabin in the Woods survivors decide it isn't worth propping up such a deceptive and vampiric world, they aren't just resisting fate or evil gods, they're fighting back against the cowards who sent them to die in the first place. That's another interesting way the two Cabin movies intersect. In Shyamalan's version, the intercessors setting up the sacrifice tell the full and absolute truth as they know it. Leonard and his cohort regret the pain they're causing, and they're as kind about it as they can be. Their frankness leads to one of the protagonists making the choice to save the world. It helps that Leonard and his crew clearly have their own skin in the game. They're willing to sacrifice themselves too, even if they're reluctant and afraid, and don't understand why it's necessary.